That's fine. There we go. And then let's go ahead and put the camera in the room so that he knows that we're speaking.
Good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon. It is 3:01, so we will call this meeting of the Okaloosa-Walton Transportation Planning Organization to order. If y'all don't mind, let's all start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, flags that way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Let's, seems like there's new or newish faces every time we do this, so let's go around the room if y'all don't mind and just give brief introductions around the table here. Mr. Wood, we'll start with you.
Jim Wood, Mid-Bay Bridge Authority.
John Tolbert, Eglin Air Force Base.
Trey Nick, Walton County Commissioner.
Anthony Valley, Definiak Springs.
Dick Ranierson, Mayor for Walton Beach.
Paul Nixon, Okaloosa County Commission.
J.B. Witten, Mayor of Crestview.
Kathy Alley, City of Niceville. Carolyn Ketchel, Chairman, Okaloosa County, BCC.
Nathan Boyles, Okaloosa County Commission.
Mary Beth Washtenaw, ECRC Transportation Manager.
Bryant Paul, Florida DOT.
Andrew Rentzis, Crestview Council, City Council.
Larry Carter, Marist, City Council.
Lucas McCormick, Walton County Commission.
Nick Allegretto, Fort Walton Beach City Council.
Danny Glidewell, Walton County Commission.
Mark Martin, City of Freeport.
Thanks, everybody, and especially thanks for coming out today. I know this was intended to be a virtual meeting, but with everything that we're going to cover, it just seemed like the virtual format really wasn't a good fit for what we needed to hash through and kind of give us a pre-look at what we'll be voting on in December as far as the long-range plan goes. So thanks for having a good, strong turnout today. Thanks to everybody in the audience. I do see we've got Secretary Gaynors here with us today from DOT. Thank you, sir, for making the trip over to join us. Glad to see you.
Yes, thank you.
Let's move straight to approval of the agenda. Do I have any add-on items? Nope. All right, I got a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Let's move to public forum. Anybody from the public that would like to address the TPO here today?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a note that we will have public forum comments in the long-range transportation plan presentation part of this meeting. I don't know if we have anyone that wants to speak now, but we don't have any public speak cards at this point.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, hearing no public forum at this time, we will close that. We'll move straight to our FDOT update. Mr. Polk, you have the floor. Your boss is here, so say it.
He's going to keep me honest today. The department's got two public meetings coming up in November we'd like to make the board aware of. First is the US 331 intersection improvement project. This will be the addition of signals at the 331 interchange at I-10, along with some traffic operations improvements going north through Defuniak. That public meeting will be held Thursday, November 4th, from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Defuniak Springs Community Center on 10th Street. There's also a hybrid option for attendance virtually. You can sign up to attend that at our DOT website. It's nwflroads.com. The second public meeting we have is on Racetrack Road, State Road 188. We'll be making improvements at the Marwalk Drive and Denton Boulevard intersections. That public meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 9th, also from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Trinity United Methodist Church on Racetrack Road. It also has a hybrid option for attending virtually, and you can sign up for that one also at the same website, nwflroads.com. And with that concludes the department's updates concerning public meetings in the near future. Initially, we were going to address Walton County's question concerning lighting on the 331 bridge, if they'd like to discuss that at this time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Glidewell, Commissioner.
I'm going to ask Mr. Powell, one of our our traffic engineers if he'll come forward and I'll present that to the board.
Good afternoon, sir.
Chance Powell, Walton County Engineering.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you. Forgive me, but I think we're talking about the roadway lighting on the 331 bridge. That's come up from our sheriff's department, and it's been discussed at our commission. We'd like to have that considered as a project to light the 331 bridge over Chattahoochee Bay in Walton County.
Thank you, sir.
In addition, the reasons that our sheriff is so concerned about the lighting is we have had numerous serious accidents on that bridge. If you're familiar with the bridge, one of them has a couple of curves in it. There's pedestrian traffic on that bridge, and because of that, we've had deaths on the bridge. We've had serious accidents, and because that's the only way north and south for the majority of our workers, when we have a serious accident on that bridge, it shuts down South Walton County and it shuts down our workers from getting down there or getting home in the afternoon. It's a serious problem, and we would strongly urge that be included in any plans to put lights on that bridge. I think it's the only bridge in the Panhandle, or at least in the Western Panhandle, that doesn't have lights on it. That's on a U.S. highway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department received this request back in January of 2020 from the county. We did look into it. Unfortunately, we do not have a mechanism for funding through our safety program, but what we can do is utilize the district capacity dollars that this TPO does provide the priority for. So we would need that project to be placed on your capacity list and then ultimately ranked high enough that our limited funding will allow us to program dollars towards that. One thing that works in your favor, at least from an initial analysis, the overall long-range plan does address safety and lighting. So we're hoping a long-range plan amendment would not be required. So that would just allow us to move right into the prioritization of the project. So it would really be up to this board to prioritize the project sufficiently high enough for us to fund.
So, and I want to make sure I understand that. That means likely it doesn't need to be a part of the needs plan. And my understanding that we actually wouldn't even need to include it necessarily on the cost feasible because it's included in that larger bucket of safety. Okay. Do you have an estimate at this point in time of what type of cost we're looking at?
No, sir, I do not. But that's something the department can work with our design office to determine what we're going to need to light that bridge.
Okay. Commissioner Gladwell, has Walton County prepared any type of cost estimate?
I'll defer to Mr. Powell.
Thanks, sir.
After speaking with DOT right now, they would help us with one. I have reached out to DOT's office earlier today, and based on the numbers they were giving us, based on the length of the bridge and the amount of work we need to be lit, it's looking like somewhere $3 million is what it would take to light that bridge.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
I was just going to ask Mr. Paul, do we need a motion to that effect to have them put that on the priority list or to begin the process? Is that what you're needing?
The department's not requiring a motion, but if the TPO, it's ultimately the TPO, when you go through the prioritization process for the upcoming work program cycle, that's when you'll need to make sure it gets placed on there. So it's all within this body's hands to do. You don't need to send anything to DOT yet.
And so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, staff, but really we'll be looking at starting that process early next year. What we're seeing today is approval of the TIP, which I think is the process that culminates last year's effort to create the work plan submitted to DOT. And so I think I would recommend that we just give consensus today to request that DOT work with Walton County to prepare maybe a sharper cost estimate so that we can have that with us early next year as we ride at the very beginning of that prioritization process, and then we can figure out where and how we can make that project fit into the approval. Is that satisfactory? Fair enough. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, any other question or comment for DOT while we were in the update portion? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda, which I believe consists of the September 2021 meeting minutes. Do we have action? Somebody has to say motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. I'll take a second from Councilman Rinsich. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the work program. Mr. Park, who's got that? Mr. Park?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to introduce, as you stated, we've got Secretary Gaynor and Director Smith in the audience today, and several other DOT staff from the district office here to support us as we introduce this tentative work program to the board. We provided two reports, one for Okaloosa and one for Walton County. They were placed in your agenda. Mary Beth also provided you these directly via email a couple of days ago. What I'm going to do is go over each report and discuss the new projects or any additions to any projects that are within the report. However, if you've got any questions on any of the projects in your respective counties, feel free to ask us at this time. With that being said, I'll move into Okaloosa County. We were able to add a new resurfacing project on Highway 98. This goes from Santa Rosa County line to Josie Road. We were able to fund the design in fiscal year 23, construction in fiscal year 25. We were able to add a new PD&E study into the department's work program. It's US 98 from Bill Parkway to the west end of the Brooks Bridge, or better known as Around the Mound. With a contribution from Fort Walton Beach, we were able to fully fund a PD&E in fiscal year 23 for that project. The department funded the TPO's #1 priority, which is the set aside for your ITS operations and maintenance. We programmed $400,000 in fiscal year 27 for the Okaloosa County portion of that. We added another resurfacing project on Danny Warfel Way from US 98 to the Mid-Bay Bridge. That's also with design in 23 and construction in 25. Along US 98 in that area, we'll be constructing some dynamic message signs on the east and west of Danny Warfel Way to incorporate into our ITS improvements along there, that corridor. That'll be in fiscal year 24. We were also able to program an incentive phase on the Brooks Bridge replacement project. In fiscal year 27, we added a $5 million incentive phase for timely completion of that bridge project. The final resurfacing project in Okaloosa County is on I-10, going from Shoal River Bridge to 285. It has design in 23 and construction in 25. And the final project for Okaloosa County is a sidewalk project. It's an all-system project on Lewis Street from Bill Parkway to Mayflower Avenue. This will be a lap project with Okaloosa County for the construction of a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of Lewis Street. And that has preliminary engineering in 25 and construction in fiscal year 27. And with that, I'll be glad to address any comments or concerns for Okaloosa County.
Yes, sir.
Just what was the resurfacing year for Danny Warfel Way fiscal year?
Fiscal year 25 for the construction.
Okay. Is that Mid-Bay Bridge Authority funded, or?
No, sir, that's actually a state road.
Okay. Any intersection improvements associated with that project, or just?
No, sir, but that one is one of the ones that's definitely on our radar with such a limited ability to expand anything due to the Cobra impacts. Again, that's something that's on the CIS radar for some very creative solutions that's going to be required for that.
Creative sounds expensive. All right. All right, any further questions out of Okaloosa County? All right.
Thank you. We'll move to Walton County. The first Walton County project is their portion of the ITS operation and maintenance. An additional $200,000 was programmed in 2027 to fully fund that priority. The other major project in Walton County was the addition of the design funds for the widening of US 98 from County Road 30A to the Bay County line. In fiscal year 27, we programmed $16.5 million towards the design of that capacity project. The PD&E is currently scheduled in fiscal year 23, so that'll be next fiscal year. So as we get into that PD&E, you'll see this project more than likely get segmented into a couple of different pieces, and then we'll break up those design funds on their respective segments. And with that, that concludes the update for Walton County. I'll be glad to answer any questions on that area.
Thank you, sir. Question or comments from Walton County? And just as a refresher for all of us, this is the part where it's a done deal, and it's going to be what it's going to be, and we just need to get it approved and then start the process for working on impacting this process next year. Is that pretty well right, Mr. Paul?
I would say that a lot more softer, but you're pretty accurate.
You have to, I don't, right? All right, this does not require a roll call? No, correct. Okay. Do we have action? Thank you, sir.
Second.
Hey, don't have everybody rush at once now. The hard work of the motion's out of the way. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, carries unanimously. Moving on to presentations.
So your next three presentations all relate to your long-range transportation plan. The first presentation will be by Ms. Kristen Shell from Walton County. She is going to present the Walton County Mobility Plan. And I'm just going to go ahead and call out the next two because everything's going to flow together. The next two have to do with the Okaloosa-Walton TPO Long-Range Transportation Plan. You have the needs plan and the cost feasible. And Ms. Jill Nobles is our project manager for that, and she will be leading that discussion.
Mr. Chairman, members of the TPO, thank you for allowing us to introduce you to the Walton County Mobility Plan briefly. So I now know that later on, most of these projects will be talked about when Jill and the consultant go over the cost feasible and needs plan maps. So I'm not going to get too much into projects, but I did want to just talk to you a little bit about our process and how we got here and sort of hit some of the highlights that are important to Walton County that are included in this plan. So back in 2017, we updated our comprehensive plan, and that was the point at which we started talking about alternative funding sources for transportation and our current proportionate fair share system. And at that time, we sort of deferred to this mobility plan effort in terms of our transportation element update. So it took us about 2.5 years to get this plan where it is, and back in early September, the County Commission voted unanimously to accept and approve the mobility plan projects that have been presented to the TPO staff for inclusion into the needs plan. And some are making it through to the cost feasible scenarios. So just to give the members an overview kind of what's going on in Walton County, we are part of the Bay Walton Sector Plan, which is the large St. Joe development on our eastern border with Bay County. That project has around 170,000 residential units. There are 27, almost 28,000 approved in Walton County at the Inlet Beach area. So just to give you an idea about population, that project alone is entitled almost 300,000 people. That is the size of Pensacola. Okay, so it is sort of a game changer over the next 50 years, I think, for the region, but especially for Walton and Bay counties. So what you see here does represent a little bit of forward planning in anticipation of that development. So currently we have 5,800 units approved in Walton County in the first detailed special area plan as part of that sector plan. And there are two DSAPs approved or that I just got from Bay County. So it's moving right along. This is Margaritaville. You've probably seen some advertisement, but it's much larger. So in general, the mobility plan has some complete streets projects. It really takes that perspective that we're looking to move people and not just cars. So you'll see quite a bit of that. There are transit routes developed for South Walton, particularly the 38 corridor, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. We did look extensively for another north-south route, and we worked with our cities. Really proud to say that the county commission had joint meetings with each of our city councils, and there were great meetings, and the county leadership to staff was, we want to enhance our cities, work with our cities, and take a one Walton approach. And so that is what we did as part of this mobility plan. We currently have included in here the West Bay Parkway to 79 connection as another north-south route. We have prioritized some 83 improvements by including them in the plan, as well as 81, which is connecting State Road 20, which is a growth corridor for us, 20 East. The city of Freeport has some extensive sewer plant capacity improvements happening, and there's a linear extension funded by a developer along the 20 East corridor. So we know that that is going to be a growth area for the county, and Freeport has a number of approved projects in the thousands in terms of residential units. So lots going on. Defuniak has, and he's going to show that later, the important connection of 83 to 331 as another north-south alternative. As mentioned previously by Commissioner Gladwell, 331 is our only north-south connector currently. Okay. Yeah, we'll skip the map because he's going to go through that. Again, I've already talked about all of this. We can skip that. This is what the map looks like in the Freeport area. These are all available on the county's website if anybody wants to delve deeper. Next slide. Okay. Another thing that you see in the mobility plan really is this State Road 20, 331 intersection. Just trying to prioritize some mobility and alternatives around that intersection. The Marquis Way West extension from Shipyard to Blue Ridge is something that both the county and the city of Freeport are extremely interested in, and that along with the current DOT project that's making its way through for that segment of State Road 20. Just to touch on South Walton a little bit, as you know, 30A is an economic generator for Walton County, but also for the region. Walton County has over 4 million seasonal visitors to the 30A area. So our traffic swells exponentially during the season, which seems to be getting longer with less shoulder. So we know that widening 30A for automobile capacity would be detrimental to the sense of place and to the sensitive nature of the communities on the corridor and maintaining that unique character. So there's sort of a parking and transit plan that seeks to preserve what is special about the corridor. The forest connection, which you're going to hear some public comment on later, is in the current TPO's LRTP, and there's not movement to take that out. And we did prioritize a lot of alternative routes to US 98 through South Walton in the long-range plan. So you'll see pretty much a parallel corridor to US 98 through South Walton developed in this long-range transportation plan. And that is very important, looking forward to the magnitude of development that's happening down there in that portion of the county, making sure that, we're not looking at an 8-lane of 98 at some point in the future, but rather this parallel corridor that also meets economic development goals. Okay. This is just a picture of the the transit and mobility hubs. The blue dots here really are the only places that large-scale parking facilities are proposed. The other green and yellow dots are basically places for transit to embark and disembark. And we developed these routes looking at data and looking at how people actually move on our corridor. So these transit routes are reflective of what people do when they come to 30A and that we see with streetlight data. This is the complete streets for South Walton. There you can see the parallel corridor. A significant portion of that is in the West Bay Sector Plan development, and then the rest moving over towards Miramar. This is Miramar. Let's go to the next slide. There's a two-way connector there. If you look, where the two yellow dots here are to the west, the county recently purchased a large piece of property there on 98 that the TDC is moving forward with a parking facility. The TDC has currently been operating some of these transit routes and moving forward with purchasing properties to make this plan more of a reality. Okay, I think that's a pretty big overview. There's about 200 projects in here, and he's going to be showing some of those later as we go through the needs plan and cost feasible. Does anybody have questions?
Questions, comment? No, ma'am. Thank you.
So next we have the Okaloosa-Walton TPO Long Range Transportation Plan, the needs and the cost feasible plan. And Ms. Jill Nobles will be presenting.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Thank you, TPO members and Mr. Chairman. Ray, if you could fix that echo on my end.
Yes, ma'am, we are going for it. We're having a little bit of mouse problems. I sure can. And go, Jill.
Thank you, that's so much better. So as you know, we are updating the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP. This month, you're hearing the draft needs plan and cost feasible plan, and next TPO meeting in December will be asking for adoption. So the Long Range Transportation Plan is composed of two main lists of projects. The needs plan has all the projects that are needed in the TPO area, and then there's the cost feasible plan. That's all the projects that we can afford. So that list is a lot smaller. We take that cost feasible plan, and that's what makes up the annual project priorities that you see in the spring and the summer. Once that gets adopted, we turn that over to Fdot. They develop their work program like you saw today. And then once that is approved by the state legislature, we eventually adopt our transportation improvement program, which shows exactly which projects and phases are getting funded over the next 5 years. So the LRTP process is only updated every 5 years, even though it can be amended at any time. But this major update only occurs every 5 years, and then the priority process is done on an annual cycle. Next slide. So we started this process the summer of 2020, looking at how the road conditions are operating right now. We worked with our steering committee and the public to develop goals and objectives of what we want to see for a transportation system for the TPO. Based off of those goals and objectives, we developed a set of criteria that we could later use to evaluate the projects that we come up with. We then looked at the financial resources, so all the funding sources that we can see coming in through the year 2045. We also looked at the congestion management process plan and updated that document to see how we can more efficiently operate the roads given the existing congestion levels, and how to operate those more efficiently. And now we are in the fun part of project listings. So we're developing the needs plan. Like I said before, it's all the projects that are needed. And then the cost feasible plan. That's a much smaller list of what we can afford. Next slide. So for the cost feasible plan, got ahead of myself. For the needs plan projects that you're gonna see mapped out later, and our consultant HDR is gonna walk us through that interactive map. But these are all, not just capacity projects of adding lanes or new roads, but they also consist of complete streets projects and major intersection improvements. So that wouldn't be just like like adding a turn lane or upgrading a signal, because that can fall under our more short-term transportation system management program. But it does include major intersection improvements. And then also, we have to include all modes of transportation, so there's also transit, bicycle, and pedestrian improvements. And so for a project to get on the LRTP, these are projects that need state or federal funding. They have to go through the TPO process. And these need to be on facilities that are on the federal functional classification system or directly impact and aid that system. Next slide. And then as we narrow down that needs plan to the cost feasible plan, like I said before, it is fiscally constrained, so it is a much smaller list. And then there's kind of like two lists within the cost feasible plan. There's the strategic intermodal system projects, which we are not going to show on the map, as those come directly from the Fdot SIS funding plan. And then what we will show is the non-SIS projects. And they do still, some do include other types of improvements on the SIS roadways, like transit. So you will see some stuff on 98 that, 98 is a SIS facility, but you'll see it highlighted as other types of improvements along that roadway. So for the non-SIS projects, we have 3 scenarios that we've developed so far. The first scenario is based off of the existing priorities, which you adopted earlier this summer. And what we did, we just took that priority list and see how much of that could still be funded, as well as additional phases of those projects. Scenario 2 is the evaluation criteria that was adopted earlier this year. We just ran all the projects through that criteria, scored them, and had the best scored projects rose to the top, and we funded as many from the top to the bottom as we could. Scenario 3 is, it does include capacity projects, even though it's all multimodal, but it has just more of those alternative modes of transportation type projects rising to the top for that scenario. The steering committee is going to meet again in a couple more weeks on November 9th, and we're going to get into the development of the final scenario, that hybrid scenario, picking the best of those first 3 scenarios, and then input from y'all as well as the public and our steering committee as what those first 3 scenarios may have missed. Next slide. Yep, now I'm going to turn it over to Ray to give us an update on the needs plan outreach that we conducted last month, and she's going to give an overview of those results, as well as read some specific comments that came in for this meeting.
Thank you, Jill. And to the chair and board members, thank you. For you new faces, I am Ray Emery McPhee. I'm one of your many public involvement tour guides. And today we're going to break down the survey results that we accumulated through an online virtual open house, as well as a public survey. On our first slide, we asked participants to rate their highest transportation concern from high to low on a scale of 1 to 5. You'll see here that they indicated a comparably equal level of serious concern for all means of transportation improvements. The next second slide here that we have would be, we asked them, looking forward the next 25 years, what are your concerns there? And we found the most significant transportation concern our participants had was for the increased traffic congestion delays, second up, lack of accessible mobility choices. And the next one that I do want to draw your attention to is the 4th highest significance is the other category. We had 5 write-in comments in the other field, and some of them do relate closely to other fields that we asked them about, but with a little bit of a caveat. So if I may, I'm so sorry. The first one, our participant asked for a plan that better moves people effectively across both counties, or a transit system to move people around 98. This commenter also indicated Highway 98 is, quote, not safe for bikes, low-speed vehicles, or pedestrians. This commenter would like to see a mobility plan that is not car-centric. Our second comment was increasing population and houses without enough parking. In line is our third comment, increased population and not enough infrastructure or roadways. Our fourth was allowing more people to build while losing nature. And our fifth and final comment in that write-in box was a reliability of our public transportation system. On slide 3, we wanted to figure out how that they get around right now. So we asked them what their primary use was, and 90% of people said they are car users. The second highest were walk, and the other were both wheelchair nominations in the write-in box. You'll see that there are 6 categories there on the left, but only 3 represented because the remaining 3 had 0 nominations. However, on this next slide that we see, we gave them the opportunity to dream big for the future and asked, given the option, what would you use? Here's where we saw a little bit more diversity in those answers. Predominantly still given the car. And on this next slide, we'll kind of figure out why. It's because it's accessible, it's reliable, it's near where they live. These are all things that make sense to us. And then on this last one, we gave 2 write-in boxes where we asked if there was a project that you could see added or removed, what would that be? And before you have a printout of those comments. We had 12 suggested additions, 25 suggested removals. I will not read through them, but I urge you to do so because there are some very, very pivotal and good voices in there. And then also you have 3 emails included from things that we received either to a transportation planner or public involvement. As mentioned earlier, we do have a few public comments that need to be read into the record. It's a little bit of a special circumstance because this meeting started out virtually. That's how we asked participants to voice their concerns. Now that we've moved into the public in-person arena, had they been here, we would have asked them for an opportunity to speak, but I will be their voice today. The first comment was from Mr. Robert Raymond. He said, as a disabled citizen living in the most excluded and underserved area of Okaloosa-Walton TPO, based on the equity analysis map, I would ask the board to review projects falling within the most underserved areas with special consideration towards leveling the playing field for our most valuable and vulnerable is what he actually said. Next was from Reynolds Henderson. They said, I would like to reiterate my support for the Complete Streets project on Highway 98 into Funiac Springs. Ashley Smith asked no new roads through the forest and objected to the needs list project A-20A, that is the Highway 98 and 38 connector. Our next was from Celeste Covina, and they said project A-28, Highway 98 to 38 connector road should be removed from the needs list. The proposed highway would go through Point Washington State Forest. This conservation land was purchased with Preservation 2000's funds, and its use is restricted to conservation and passive recreation. During the ongoing PD&E study, an agency meeting was held in May of 2019. All state, federal agencies, and utility companies in attendance rejected a road through Point Washington State Forest. In August of that same year, a public hearing was held and nearly all in attendance spoke against a road through Point Washington State Forest. Walton County citizens have continued to object to a road fragmenting the conservation land, and she again asked that you remove that project from the list. Next, Mr. Mark Messerly said the same, no new roads through the forest, as did Carolyn Zonia. I am writing to object the needs list, project A-28. It's environmentally inappropriate to carve roads through these last remaining forest spaces. Thank you. And the last one was from Beverly Otson, saying this road would do extensive and irreparable damage to the forest. It would not improve traffic on 30A, it would bring more traffic to the area. Walton County should address the many options for mitigating traffic on 30A without destroying the valuable ecosystem of the forest, one of the area's major assets. And that does conclude my analysis of the public input findings. Do we have any questions on that portion?
I have a question, maybe it's a comment.
Yes, Mr. Wood.
One of the first respondents mentioned that Highway 98 was not safe for low-speed vehicles. Low-speed vehicles are not authorized on Highway 98. So, yes, it is unsafe. So.
Thank you for your time. And I'm going to kick it back to Jill. She's going to go over the next steps, and then we're going to look at some maps.
Thanks, Ray. We can go to the next slide. So over the next 3 months, earlier this month, we held another steering committee meeting. And today we're presenting the draft needs plan and draft cost feasible plan. Moving into November, we will hold another steering committee meeting. That'll be on November 9th, where we dive more into those cost feasible plan scenarios and really work out with the steering committee that final hybrid scenario. Then we will be doing another round of public outreach specifically for the cost feasible plan. And in December, we will be back for final adoption. As I turn it over to Matt with the map, I just wanted to, reiterate that, this is for information right now, and adoption won't be until December. Presenter. And so if you do see things as he's going through the map, please take note. Reach out to me and/or your staff, and we'll work on fixing it for that final adoption in December. All right, Matt, you can go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jill, and thank you all for having me this afternoon. I'm Matt Watson from the HDR. I've been working with Jill and the CRC staff for the last 1.5 years as we've developed all the components to this long-range transportation plan. I'm also joined by Corey Wilkinson in the room there with you. So today, that was the maps. My goal is to make sure that we walk through this interactive map that displays both the needs plan and the 3 cost feasible scenarios. As we look at it right now, and I believe it's on the screen in front of you, you can see the almost the complete boundaries of the Okaloosa-Walton TPO, and you can see that there are needs throughout the entire area. Those needs are outlined in the 5 categories Jill mentioned, that they're capacity, bike ped, intersection, which are generally shown as circles, complete streets and corridor studies, things that might add to a corridor, as well as transit projects. And a number of corridors have multiple projects on them, as we'll dive into. With these over 230 projects that are shown right now, we'll zoom in and take a look at some of those, and I'm going to follow kind of a clockwise pattern where I start in the northeast quadrant near Antioch Springs, and I'll work my way south to South Walton County, and then west across 98 to Destin and Fort Walton Beach, and then north finally to conclude that loop up into Crestview. And so as we do that, for each one I'll start with the needs plan, which is that broadest list, and then I'll work my way through the 3 scenarios, which do have fewer projects. Currently, I'm panning the map into Antioch Springs. Looks like that image is up in front of you now. So going down that color scheme, it should be popping out that those red ones represent capacity for new roadways. So those capacity style projects are helping connect areas of the community that may not be connected right now, maybe producing better direct routes, whether that's the I-10 or the potential rerouting of State Road 83 to meet US 331 and provide a continuous path through the community, or one that I'll highlight here in the southwest quadrant, that would be the Bruce Avenue extension that can connect a number of schools into South 331 and provide alternatives to using some of the primary intersections there. So those are the capacity style projects. Some of the others, you can see that there's a ped bike project along Baldwin Avenue that continues through the community to provide access to a number of the businesses that exist there, as well as the park and others. But those projects, as you can see, there's a variety of them there that serve different purposes. One more that I'll highlight, and it's a little bit probably more difficult to see from a color perspective, but it's the complete streets corridor studies, and I'm highlighting this one in particular. You see, I'll go back to it in a moment, but it's the US 90 Complete Streets project, and it's there to reevaluate what's being done in the right of way, and to allow for better mobility across the board to the community there. So that's kind of a tour of how we'll go through the needs plan and through the other communities. But but shy of clicking on every project, even though it said 230, I wanted to give a flavor and so that everybody could see what was out there. Now, as I'm going to pull back the needs plan, I want to highlight the current priorities. And it's not an accident. I highlighted the current priorities, and there aren't any projects that fit into this region, even as I scoot back further. So that's one thing while we talk about creating that hybrid plan. That's why we have 3 different scenarios and 3 different ways to look into it. Another version is more the cost feasible scenario, or sorry, of the cost feasible scenario, the evaluation criteria. And this is the evaluation criteria that we built together through this process to say what kind of projects do we want to come to the surface. And one of those projects here is US 331 in the south section between 90 and 10. And this is a product of the Walton County Mobility Plan. As we brought those projects in, we have ranked and scored those along with a number of other projects that have been developed throughout the area, and saw which ones really met those goals. And those projects also have preliminary cost projections so that they could be tied to that feasibility. So you can see one of those there in the Defuniak Springs area. And then the third scenario is that multimodal scenario. And it doesn't mean exclusively ped biking or transit, but it looks to the projects that are most likely to support the primary roadway by adding those features or to be around those features, maybe making connections that didn't exist previously. And so in here, I'll go back and highlight some of the ones I showed that have advanced from a needs plan into a cost feasible scenario, like the US 90 Complete Street, the Bruce Avenue extension, and the US 90 Trail, which will also pop up on the Crestview side as we complete our clockwise motion around the TPO area. So that's where we sit for the northeast area of the TPO. And we have the needs plan, which has that broadest brush and pulls in everything that would help over the next 25 years. And then some of these cost feasible scenarios. And at the cost feasible scenario side, we're only showing the projects that are physically in determined spaces as opposed to projects that may be more generalized, such as signal timing that could be on an area-wide basis, which would also make that plan. So I've switched back to the needs project type, and I'm going to continue to move along so that we can cover the region and the time frame that we have here. As I pan south, as though I was driving south on US 331, I reached the city of Freeport and the community here. We've got a couple of the projects and the goals really that Kristen brought up through the Walton Mobility Plan. And I'd like to highlight that it's the intersection of State Road 20 and US 331. It's widening projects along State Road 20 to provide that additional capacity through there. It's some of the roads that might help the community, and I'm panning around through Freeport that would help the community make trips that do not require the major highway system. One of those that was brought up earlier is the Marquis Way East Connector Roadway. See that's popped up. You can see for each of these, they're defined with a purpose statement, which helps identify not just kind of where they are or what they may cost, but what's intended to be achieved by the ultimate project when it's in there. So you can see there are a number around Freeport to help with that growth. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit to show the cost feasible scenarios so you can see how they fit within the region. But that State Road 21 is, and I'm going to click on it again just to keep it highlighted. That State Road 21 is the one from the existing priorities. As I move to the evaluation criteria scenario, you see more segments of US 331 from the Walton County Mobility Plan that pop up as meeting the goals that were defined in the evaluation criteria. And then finally, the multimodal, and as mentioned earlier, that the multimodal scenario wasn't exclusively head bike projects, but rather projects that had that kind of broader view, and having State Road 20 as an improved route through Freeport would have that as well. Okay, we have the needs plan back up, continuing the tour and hopefully informational way to go through these long list of projects. You can see that in the South Walton area, as described in the description of the Walton mobility plan, but creating more routes. There's a number of new capacity projects that aren't necessarily widening, but rather new roadways that would help support mobility in the area and lessen the pressure to provide capacity on US 98. Also notable is that on 30A, that you have multiple projects, that there are transit circulators that have been planned, as well as roadway upgrades that would fall kind of in that space between a capacity and really a more complete streets style project in that area. As you can see, there's numerous projects here. I think this one is another one, good one to call out for you, is that West Bay Parkway that would help connect with Bay County into Walton County as part of that sector plan. So to look at this at the other level is to look at those cost feasible scenarios. The priority, you got that West Bay Parkway I brought up just a moment ago that fell into this area. The evaluation criteria, we talked a little bit about 331 up in Freeport, but I also wanted to highlight that this US 98 adaptive signal control scores very well as a tool that can provide that flexibility to handle peak demand, as well as the flexibility to handle off-peak periods and maybe provide quicker response for side streets with pedestrians who may wish to cross at signalized locations. And then the third scenario, that multimodal scenario, and in this area, the project that has been there is that multimodal facility that would go along a utility easement and provide a parallel to 98 so that bike users and trail users could enjoy and move east-west without necessarily needing to be on 98 property. So continuing to the west, I'll zoom in a little bit closer so we can see the south part of the counties as we move toward Destin. You can see in the Miramar Beach area that there are a number of those kind of new roadway projects with that complete street emphasis. And then as we move into Destin, that a lot of pieces of sidewalk that aren't complete do make it in that ped bike group, as well as capacity for things like the Midday Bridge in the new connector road to help extend what is Maddie Kelly Boulevard and make a connection from Airport Road to US 98. They're just an example of some of the projects in that area. There's also another complete street project on Calhoun Street to make for a better connection there near the heart of the town. So going from that, looking at some of the scenarios is the current priorities. And the current priority that really stands out on the map when we're looking at this portion, it looks like it's the highway. The transit project has actually been up there for a while, and it's an express transit service from Niceville to Destin. And that's where I said that when you have multiple projects on the same corridor, sometimes it's maybe harder to visualize, but that is one that has been there for a while now. So, it reappears in the evaluation criteria, as well as that adaptive signal control, which would be a secondary, or not secondary system, but a second system of similar character on US 98 on the Okaloosa side. And then the multimodal scenario, kind of organizing some of these, organizing some of the ped bike connection limitations out there so that it's easier to move as a pedestrian or a bicyclist on sidewalks off of US 98. The transit project to come across, and the waterborne transit service that could support that area. Continuing along as we move toward Fort Walton Beach, one thing to highlight is these E+C projects, such as the Brooks Bridge, are considered to be in place for this plan. We're not sitting there and ranking them, but rather assuming that if this project's in place, what other projects would be important, such as the Around the Mountain, which was discussed earlier, as a project to be advanced and to support both capacity and connectivity in the Fort Walton Beach area. You can tell there are a number of projects right in these zones in here that overlap. But I'll zoom in tighter so that it hopefully shows up larger on the screen for you in the room there, that there are a series of sidewalk projects that have been combined, improvements to roads like Hollywood Boulevard and Complete Streets projects to provide more features for those and encourage other modes to be used. I'll zoom out a little bit more to show that there are some new corridors, such as the Hollywood Boulevard extension over on the far western edge there, as well as improvements to roads like State Road 198 and Dual Parkway. And those are good ones to highlight because you'll see that they do pop up here in our other scenarios. One of the existing priorities is the multi-use path between Destin and Fort Walton Beach, the extension of Hollywood Boulevard, from the evaluation criteria, things like the capacity project, that if you're on the eastern end of the Brooks Bridge, that capacity carries you through the remaining signalized intersections. Things like the complete streets on 98 through Fort Walton Beach, and improvements on State Road 189 for additional capacity in that Beltway Roadway. And at the multimodal level, covering more of the transit projects as well as some of the ped bike projects in Fort Walton Beach. All right. So continuing north, and I hope that everybody's able to see this well and getting a chance to kind of take in the map scenario. In Niceville, we do have some capacity projects that are visible there as well. But continuing north along State Road 85, another corridor that has a number of different projects and needs. And I'll highlight those in the Crestview area. Again, this darker color represents existing plus committed. That's the first segment here, the Crestview bypass, which is being moved forward in that design build format. And I'll go ahead and zoom in tighter so that hopefully some of these projects with the smaller circles can be seen, such as Antioch Road and Realignment to connect with Crabapple and make a more effective intersection in the plus format there. PJ Adams at 85, Mirage at 85, all along the needs plan. And then at a broader level, things like the northwest portion of the western bypass. And notice that this is an alternative B. This is shown as an alternative A. There's a couple projects where it's early enough that it's sort of an either or maybe something different. Eastern bypass, as well as in-town projects such as pedestrian facilities along State Road 85 and better connections from the Crestview High School to those sidewalks. So zooming out a little bit, I'll go ahead and drop the needs so that we can see the cost feasible more clearly. The cost feasible includes a pair of intersections if we're looking at it at the current priorities. They're at US 90, and they're at PJ Adams, as well as the eastern bypass. From the evaluation criteria, more the focus on Interstate 10 and getting those capacity elements, really making sure that those are added into State Road 85, pop up from a scoring perspective. And then a multimodal level, the complete streets elements of 85, that ability to connect in other ways besides vehicular along 85. And I said we would conclude by finding our US 90 trail over here in Rescue. So hopefully that's allowed everybody in the room there today to see both the interactive map and understand kind of what's all has taken place to develop this needs plan, to develop these three scenarios or these three philosophies by which to help raise projects that are cost feasible, and provide a good background for what we're going to do next as we take these three scenarios and form them into a final hybrid scenario to advance for the December meeting. But I'll pause if there's questions on the map. As I said, Corey can also help me answer questions in the room, or Jill, if you'd like to go ahead and wrap it up if there are any questions.
So I'll open the floor up to questions before we move on. I do want to kind of preface all of this by saying, so I had a chance to get a pre-look at this. I think as some of you did as well. I think it was during the recent steering committee meeting. And as you can see, this is dense, right? It's hard to look at it in a single shot and be able to absorb all of it and understand exactly what the options are. And or if you can, you're a much better person than I am, because I certainly couldn't. I'm on my second take, and I'm still, trying to figure out how to kind of absorb it all and understand it. And so what I would certainly, we'll have all the discussion y'all want to have here today. Bear in mind, no decisions can be made today. I would strongly, strongly encourage you over, between now and our December meeting to be on the website, be looking at these interactive maps and be understanding the differences between, these various proposals, because as I understand looking at them, they are vastly different. The prioritization that results between these, these different regimes creates different project rankings, and we're talking about serious stuff that'll inform how our two counties grow over the next 20 years. And the thing that maybe struck me most starkly was, throw all the lines on the map of all the needs, and then throw the possible cost feasibles on there in any one of the three plans, and you see about 95% of those lines disappear. What that means is there ain't enough money to go around, and so it's going to create some tension between our respective jurisdictions, between the cities, between the counties, as we try and arrive at a list that treats everybody as fair as we can. So just bear in mind that if we're going to do this well, moving into December, we're all going to have to do our best to be as prepared as we can on the options that are available before us. And with that, I will open the floor. Questions, comments?
Yes, Mr.
Mayor.
I understand this is just a draft and we're not going to vote on it, but I want to float a concept dealing with a project I've been bird dogging for 4 years now, I guess. And in full disclosure, I live in this area where we have 500-600 different cars going in and out of Rolling Ridge several times a day. When the county had the project, there were ways of looking at how to get people in and out of there. But then that project changed to Fdot at Crabapple. And at that time, the original plan was to put a roundabout in there, and that wasn't well received by many people. And the roundabout then became a traffic light. It was there for a while, and the next time I went to a public meeting, the traffic light was gone also because of the wetlands on Antioch, Old Antioch Road. We create a slowdown because of the mitigation process. So I've been dealing with Okaloosa County Public Works. I haven't involved any commissioners here because they're all on the TPO. And I can't share that kind of information, but I've been dealing with the Public Works Director. And he's told me that the mitigation, we have a new mitigation bank that is making the process and the permitting faster, that would keep it in line with the rest of the project. It would not slow down the whole project. So it doesn't make sense to me to take this little piece of a $200 million project and set it aside for 5, 10, 15 years, when I would like to see it roll back into a $200 million project. And if for some reason we can't find the $1.2 million, whatever it is, out of $200 million, then Commissioner Wells, I would like you to pay for it. No, no. What I would then suggest is that I would propose that we bring it to the county commissioners and ask you all to fund it on a reimbursement proposal with Fdot. But it just doesn't make sense to me to leave this little piece hanging out there. It was part of the major project. It went away because The fear was mitigation process was gonna slow the whole project down, and I think, the process is better now. In fact, we have an expert back here. Do you want to address that?
Mr. Osh, you're welcome. If you're going to address it, grab a microphone for us.
Jason Autry, Director of Public Works for Okaloosa County. What the mayor is speaking about is a segment that's the realignment of Old Antioch Road or Antioch Road and tie in PG Adams Parkway. And he's correct. Initially, we were having some pretty significant concerns with wetland mitigation. We have worked through those things. I can't thank the DOT staff enough for helping us get through that in the Water Management District as well. And so I don't feel like this little piece will necessarily slow us down as we were concerned before. I'm not necessarily saying tie it into the project that's going on now, but certainly to see it slide up, I see the benefit to it. From a traffic flow perspective, it is something we wanted to do from the very beginning. To realign this roadway and to get the intersection operable with Crabapple would make it a smoother flowing area. We just couldn't at that time because we didn't want to forsake the interchange progress because of this little side piece over there. So I certainly do understand that the mayor's correct. He and I have talked about it. The situation we're in today is not what we were when we had this as part of the project upwards of 2 years ago. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you would have to it, Mayor, if that was your hunting for me to say.
No, I like putting you on the spot. Thank you.
You and five commissioners, I know. Yeah.
You know, when we looked at the report last month, and you would think when you're number 29 out of 28 projects that I would have given up, but doing the research, I think there's a way to save that. And I just want to put it out there so that maybe we can work together and get this done before we vote on the final plan next month.
Noted, and Jason, don't leave it. So if I'm understanding, one, it is identified on the needs plan. Two, it kind of is a carve out from that larger project, meaning it could be cut back into the larger project, I suppose.
To a degree, I don't know that I would necessarily do that because you're going to alter the permitting process that we're already in the middle of. But there have been some changes. Namely, we have moved forward with mitigation. Also, the county has acquired property as part of our project along there that makes it a little bit more feasible to get it through there. There was a parcel that we actually have already purchased. We're putting some stormwater facilities there. I wouldn't necessarily suggest putting it into the contract that the DOT is moving forward with. We could look to do that on the county side of it if there is some sort of reimbursement approach to it. But it's not designed, and it's not at the same level, but I think if you do advance it, there's certainly a good time to work with this in the next 3.5 or so years because we're going to be doing construction in that location anyhow.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but given the complex funding of that overall project and the partnerships that were involved, one, there is a possibility of some surplus funding that remains if we are able to come in under budget, which has looked at least optimistic to this point on that complement of projects. I don't currently envision that necessarily being a project that would be funded through the prioritization process of the TPO if we're able to keep that larger $200 million project on budget or slightly under. Is that a fair assertion?
We're fortunate. We have a very unique situation in that project. You've got Triumph funding, you've got DOT funding, you've got county funding, which includes, a traditional gas tax and then surtax, which is very, very healthy. You are correct that that project, that $200 million project is broken up into about 7 different budget projects. And to commingle funds can create more issues than others, and it may not be a requirement that it's tied into a DOT job. You might not want to because then you federalize it. So there may be a value to leaving it as a county effort. So I think you're correct. There's different funding ways that go about working that. We are in a good position financially at this time, although I will throw that caution out there. Nothing is cheaper today than it was yesterday, and certainly not cheaper than it was 6 months ago. And we have a 3.5-year, 4-year timeline ahead of us.
Okay. And I think my point only to the mayor was, something that certainly keep it top of mind here, but I think some of those other avenues, kind of looking within Okaloosa County as we work that project as a partnership may ultimately be where we're able to get that one prioritized, as long as sales tax keeps coming in high.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Other questions or comments? Question or comment? All right, I don't see any lights. Where are we going?
So this was for information this month. It is not, we do not need to vote, but you will be voting on this in December. So they will come back. We will have a steering committee between now and then and get to the end of this. So.
And if I may add, the next steering committee, we're going to be presenting the scenario 4, the hybrid scenario that cuts across all 3 of these and perhaps adds things that may not even be on one of these scenarios. So that'll be the first time your staff will start seeing that. We'll do coordination on that through the month of November so that when you come back to the this meeting in December, your staff will have vetted all those and we will have worked through that scenario. Be a good option for to bring to you.
Thank you, Corey. Before we move on, I also want to note Walton County, the effort that y'all put into your plan over there is really impressive. So I know that's been a multi-year process, but anyhow, great work and something I think we'll be nudging Okaloosa County to take a look at. Our upside growth may not be quite curve may not look quite as steep as yours is in the next couple of years, but I mean, still I think there's a lot of value to that planning that y'all have done. So, well done. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not read the list of information items today since we've had a rather lengthy meeting. I do, however, want to point your attention to the flyer that's at your place, and it was in your agenda for our transportation symposium. I know that some of you have already registered for this event. I would encourage you, if you have not, to please do so as soon as possible. And also, if you are planning to spend the night at the Hilton Sandestin, if you would go ahead and make your room reservations. I believe they extend through today. I'm looking at public involvement. Hello. Yes, so today's the last day to get the really cheap $100 hotel room. It is November the 4th and 5th, and if you have any questions, please come to our staff afterwards. We are looking for attendees as well as sponsors at this point. So the only other thing that we have to announce is that your next meeting, and this is where you will approve your long-range plan, is Thursday, December the 9th. And this will be at the South Walton Annex Boardroom. This is a different location. We've met here in the past, but it's been several years ago. It's basically at the corner of 331 and Highway 98, and it is in South Walton County. So.
That doesn't mean you're going to get all your projects approved. I just want to go on record. All right, what do we have left? Any other business from the floor before we get ready to wrap this thing up? All right, it was good seeing everybody. Thanks again for making the trip. Thanks to DOT for coming out, and we'll see y'all at the symposium, I suppose. Thanks.
There's sound. Yeah. There we go.
We got that meeting at what, 10 tonight? For the
What do you think about doing the vote? I know, I was just voting on
So what, quicker? Oh, yeah. You found it? In what's his face's people? No. Oh. No, I found it's been in our bag for a while. I just we don't have to test it now. I was just wondering. Oh no, I want to test it because I was sitting up there and I was like, it would be so much easier if you had that off of you. Clicking somebody's slides while they're standing right in front of you. Yeah, why not?
Well, I was very tempted to take that keyboard over there and just be like, just click the button. But then when it stopped working,
I know.
I was like, never mind.
It said,
You're not giving me away.
Well, I have, all systems, we have that. Look at I know you're wrong.
I love how like they're like, oh, it's for your shoulder, and I'm like, no, no, I think it's Leandra. Thanks, have a wonderful day. I like see her in my head saying,
we showed up to your computer. I was like,
suck, dude.
and she just goes, hi. That's cute little Leon.
It's so funny how everybody wants to call her Leon.
I want to get so fancy.
I just want to call her Leandre. Like, I don't know what was to call her that. It's like,
That was hysterical.